This is Unscripted Her. One family, four voices. Smart, fun, what's really going on? Finally, our discussion unscripted.
Hello again, Unscripted Her family. We are back.
Hi.
What's up? What's up?
We are bringing you part 2 of our series. Now we're calling the Game Changers series, and we do have indeed a true game changer with us here today. She is a scientist. She is a competitive bodybuilder champion. She is a she is a friend. She is a native South Carolinian, and she is a public office holder. And we are proud to pick up our discussion with Mayor Tracie Clemons. And
Welcome back.
Previously, I don't think I'd mentioned that we have a lot in common with Mayor Clemons, each of us. I know that Darlene did speak about their common love, interest in fitness and training and competing in the bodybuilding arena. But we also share a background with her as far as educational aspects of our journeys is concerned, in that my niece, our founder, Ellen, also spent some time in Massachusetts furthering her own education. I was just curious, what's that experience like, maybe for each of you, or maybe even Ellen would like to share some of her experience, and we can hear how it was for Trace as well. I just in the time that I was in Massachusetts, particularly in the Cambridge area, I just found it to be a mecca for education and culture and diversity. And I gotta believe that there's a lot of opportunities up there that sometimes we might overlook, especially traveling from way down in the deep South, Tracie, where you came from.
That's right.
For a little while in DC, and then deciding to make the leap all the way up to New England. How did you find that journey to be different or even the same? Some of the challenges you met in making that transition from Norway, South Carolina to Lowell, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was hungry. I was thirsty, and I just knew that it just goes back to being uncomfortable and breaking those barriers. I wasn't afraid to leave my element of the South to get to the successful place that I wanted to get at, because I just always knew that I was going to be successful, break barriers, and do different things. Like, I am my parents' different child, right? And so there was an opportunity available, and I knew that taking upon that particular opportunity in Massachusetts would definitely get me to where I wanted to be in my career. And so it goes back to making sacrifices and making compromises. I didn't want to leave the DC area. I mean, you guys are great, right? We had a great time in DC, and I was like, you know what? I got to do it, and, anytime you go against the grain, opportunities just open up. And when I got to Massachusetts and I worked for that particular company, and it was an eye opener for me. Yeah. It was a cultural shock. Yeah. You talking about coming from the South, where everything is kind of just very conservative, right? And then you move to the DC area, and now you're like in an area where everybody's just open-minded, right? Yeah. And then you move to a state that is predominantly white, right? Yeah. And you're like, okay, but then it fit right in my career and in my industry, it is a male domineering and mostly Caucasian atmosphere. So that was the adjustment that I was set up with this new opportunity in Massachusetts. Like, there's a different language, right? There's a different vibe. There's a different way of applying your learning applications to the job market, if you will. Yeah. So it was different on that level, right? And so being a physicist, I'm telling you, and then being Black and then being a woman, I had to work extra hard,
Yeah.
which made the whole journey uncomfortable. But guess what? On the very end, right? On the very end, it was like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, going through that metamorphosis stage, right?
Right.
Yes.
That was my experience in Boston. I was like a caterpillar for 6 years. And at the very end, when I walked across that stage and got that master's degree in health physics, woo, I became a butterfly, right? And I've been soaring ever since.
I love that.
Flying away.
Tracie.
Right. And Boston has a lot. Boston is like a hidden treasure to me. It had a lot of venues that you can go to. And Boston, to me, is the hub of education and training. Like, that's the state you go to get that advanced level of education and that advanced level of training in whatever field that you're in.
I read.
And I'm sure Ellen can speak on that as well, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I haven't checked the data lately, but I remember reading that Boston has the most colleges per capita. So if you took like a number like 100 and found a ratio, it has, like, if everyone had 100 colleges, say, it has the most out of those 100 compared
That
to
is correct.
any other city in America, and probably metropolitan statistical area or anything like that. So it really is the educational hub of the United States and arguably one of the world. I don't know about your experience, but it was incredibly international.
Yes.
I felt like I was able to really experience different cultures right here in the United States and travel to different places just based on my classmates. It was so enriching from a cultural perspective. And then there were some other things that were enriching too from a cultural perspective, but I don't want to hog our time about those stories. So, thank you for that. Wait a second. So I went up there for my MBA, went to MIT Sloan. And I think several things stuck out to me, but when I was up there, to your point, Tracie, when you're in DC, it's cosmopolitan and it's incredibly diverse, and you do see a lot of African Americans or Latinos or people from the LGBTQ community all mixing, and it's almost like it's normal. It's like, to us, it's normal that we're here. We may have a certain job or we may do something. So when I went off to Cambridge, which is diverse in this sense from an international perspective,
right, I
was introduced to this term called underrepresented minority. I never knew what that was. I was like, what is an Like, I'm a minority. They're like, no, ma'am, you're underrepresented minority.
That's a difference.
Yeah, they're minorities. Like, there could be Asians or different minorities, but you're like within the minority, you're here. And I was like, where did I go? And, for the first time in a really long time, probably since maybe I was a child, I realized I had imposter syndrome. And I remember sitting on my couch with one of my professors, and it was that feeling of, I just didn't belong because I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me. And coming from DC, that was such a shock to me.
Yes.
And to your point, where I went to school was largely Asian, but then males. And the community did a lot to break down barriers, and I became co-president of the Black Graduate Student Association. So we were working really hard, but I think it all hit me one day when I was in Cambridge, and I was at a coffee shop. And actually, it was a person of color that said this to me. I had an MIT shirt on, and I don't know why he felt so bold to say this to me, other than I'm a woman and a woman of color, and people think they can say stuff to us. I don't know why. And touch our hair. Mm-hmm. And he goes, you go to MIT? And I said, yeah. And he's like, you don't look like you go to MIT. And it just really solidified like my whole imposter syndrome. And I was looking at him, I was like, really, brother? And he goes, I mean, we see more people of color at Harvard. He's like, you know, and then we started having this conversation. I understood his perspective. He didn't feel that they were as welcoming, but I had a different experience that was very welcoming to me at MIT. It was an incredibly awesome experience and really positive at my business school. But so yeah, I know what you meant, because I never felt like an imposter or underrepresented.
Right.
And they use that term. We use that term to collect data. But boy, oh boy, you know, it blew my mind. My mom is whispering as if she's not on camera. She's like, like, Mom, you kind of on camera.
No, y'all don't know. You didn't hear me. No, the curtain.
I don't think we can produce that out. So what's your story?
Well, my story is Ellen called me and she was telling me about being an EARN and the only one, and she had a moment. She said she didn't know whether or not this was the right atmosphere. You remember that conversation?
Yeah.
And I told her to go and look behind some of those windows, because I was pretty sure Harriet Tubman was there. And I know Sojourner Truth was enrolled, and I was pretty sure Phyllis Wheatley was in one of those classes.
Wow.
And go and look for them because they were there.
I love that.
That's her story. I love it. So anyways, I will thank you for that. She did. She always drops those ancestors in, and
they were there.
I will let you take it back from here,
This
Lynda, and
is
ask any questions.
Unscripted Her.